So back when I looked up the IMDb nonsense, it said casting.
Yeah.
Did you get your start in casting?
My very first job. It's such a crazy lucky story.
Okay,
but
please share it.
My very, very, very first job, and this was part of why going to UCLA was a good thing, because being out here, I had a friend who knew a friend. He was like, "Oh, she works for some producer. You should call her." And she called, and she's like, "They need somebody in the casting office on Monday. Can you start?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it's this. I assumed the company name was Forrest Gump, right? Because it was like, that can't possibly be the title. It's like such a weird. It was like, it sounded like Procter and Gamble. You know what I mean? Like when you didn't know what Forrest Gump was, and then I showed up, and there was like, "Oh no, it's a Tom Hanks movie directed by Robert Zemeckis." And so I was an intern for a week, and this is back when casting. Now people send, all submissions are electronic, so every headshot obviously just like comes in on a website. Back then it was fucking huge. Can we swear on this thing?
Sure.
Envelopes full of headshots, floor to ceiling, and VHS tapes. And it was complete chaos. And in my first week, I organized everything in the office, and then they had to hire me because I was the only one who knew where everything was. And it was like, and it wasn't, it wasn't like an evil plan. It was just like my OCD kicking in, just wanting things to be organized. So that was my first job.
And would you do that?
Casting assistant on Forrest Gump.
With the stacks of envelopes, I would assume those are from agents.
Yeah.
And so in there could possibly be photos for this role, various roles. You would separate them, the headshots by roles.
Who comes in and says like, he's playing ping pong and he's like, "Sergeant Gump, I have your discharge papers." Like that role, which has one line in the movie.
Yeah.
Probably like 8,000 actors got submitted.
What?
For. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just
wow.
And it's the ultimate. If your kid wants to be an actor, have them work in a casting office. Like, you know, because it was just, it actually showed you the other side of the numbers game.
Yeah.
So long story short is I worked in every department on that movie, because after casting was done, I just became a PA or became a location assistant, became like a,
oh wow.
I helped on the Oscar campaign. You know, it was
cool.
Yeah.
It was the rare movie that I got to work on for 18 months or something like that, you know, because it went forever.
Right.
And it was the best. It was such a great first job.
That's
Ridiculously
an amazing
lucky.
first job.
Ridiculously
yeah, right. Go back to casting for a second.
Yeah.
So when you say like 8,000 people went for the guy with one line, how then does it boil down? Because I've been the guy that's gotten the one line.
Yeah.
Because as we know, I can't remember anything more than that.
But this is in his wheelhouse. How many? You're counting words. You're like 17 words.
17
That's
words,
a lot of words.
You know, other actors count lines. I count words, and hope it doesn't get too high.
Honey, I got 17 words in the new Zemeckis movie.
I could do it.
Yeah.
So how does it land at the one guy? Like out of the 8,000, like by the time you're at photograph, and let's bring the number down to 200.
Right.
By
you're
at the photograph number 125, you've seen fucking faces. Like, why not just go? Well, you know what? It's this guy.
In a well-functioning world, I guess the answer is that there's a casting director who is exerting a bit, who first of all knows the town pretty well. Right?
Okay.
So, I mean, now people are putting auditions on tape, and you can kind of get through a lot of auditions much more quickly than back in the day when you had to physically bring people in.
Right.
And there would, you know, and you would have this sheet, and it was every 15 minutes or whatever it was. And you're like, you know, you can only in the course of a day see 20 people for a role or whatever, you know, so you're going to have to knock those out fast.
Right.
But in a perfect, like having worked with Allison Jones, who comes to mind as like the gold standard, in my opinion.
The big, you see her name on everything.
She's the best casting director. I mean, I've worked with a lot of great casting. Ellen Lewis, who was my boss on Forrest Gump, is an amazing, amazing casting director. But Allison had so much just knowledge of, especially the comedy scene,
right? That
she would just be like, this person who's playing this role, I think you're going to like either this, or that. And then people would come in for, you know, as a showrunner, you'd watch people, and the first person who came in, you'd be like, done. Like, that's it. Like, and then the second person who came in was like, oh, I was wrong. That's the, you know, like they're so good, and it's her taste that is making that happen.
Right.
She's just out at shows, and she knows who's funny, and she knows who's funny in a specific way. So hopefully that's happening. To answer your question, which is like, you got 8,000, you know, guys who could play a desk sergeant or whatever, probably looking at credits. You know, it's like, has this person worked before?
Okay.
Has this person, you know, is like, is there any, if you're at that level, which is a huge movie, you know, nobody knew it was going to win Best Picture, but it was a Robert Zemeckis movie. He's a big director. It's got a huge budget. Tom Hanks is a big star at that point.
Yeah.
So you can afford to say, yeah, he's only done 2 movies. I'm not seeing him, even though if it's a one-line part.
Gotcha.
So I think that would be the first culling process, and then the second one would be the casting director exerting a little bit of like, okay, come on, let's be honest. Out of that 20, only 8. I'm only showing 8 to the director, and then the director chooses.
Terrific. Great. Thanks for that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's helpful. It's because I've been.
It's up to date as of 1994 too. Yeah, like that is, you can take that information right to the bank of like a now defunct bank. Yeah.
Well, there must. I mean, I've always assumed that there's just a lot of politics involved, like everything else too, right? Where like this casting director has to do a favor to this agent because then they can get the next thing that they want going in the other direction.
If there's enough of a relationship there and it's an important enough agent, and this is true in writing and in everything, it's just like an agent can say, can you just do me a solid and get this person in? Just see this person.
Yeah.
Who otherwise would not have gotten in the room. And it might be like, this client's going to fire me if I don't get him an audition, you know, this week. Right. Just do me that solid. I'm going to, you know, like, and that agent is going to do the casting director a solid somewhere down the line, or just did or whatever. So yeah, there's tons of that too. But this is maybe a little Pollyanna-ish, but I actually think Hollywood's more of a meritocracy than people tend to think it is. Like, having been around for a long time, people who genuinely suck seem to wash out. Like you know, like after some period of time. But yeah, those little individual things happen all the time. For sure.
To hear the whole conversation, subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, or visit nevernotfunny.com.